What on earth are these? Well, the place you're most likely to have seen them is in the hands of iShowSpeed, of all places. But these are the TLSS Libero in the AG outsole, so we've got a lot to talk about there. It's actually MG. And this is a Teijin synthetic laceless boot that comes in at around €130 and is absolutely packed with tech. Okay, as mentioned, the upper is a Teijin synthetic, which, if you're wondering where you've heard that before, it's because it makes up quite a lot of your favorite vapors. For example, the Vapor 10 had a synthetic upper. However, Teijin can be changed and modified to be a variety of different things, and this is a much more synthetic leather style upper than what you're going to get in, for example, the Vapor 10 or the TLSS counterpart, the Striker here. It's pretty soft, and again, softer than the Striker, but it's not particularly thin. So when it comes to your touch on the ball, it's pretty solid and direct without being barefoot at all. It's obviously massively uninterrupted with this huge striking surface, and then just these little added elements of texture, which are the T-Wet grip that you can see labeled on the back here. There's a little bit of leather grain through the upper as well, and overall it's got a slightly tacky, sticky feeling to it, which just means that even though you've got this what looks like smooth, big, clean striking surface, it never really gets too slippy in any weather conditions. You've always got a good amount of touch and feel for the ball. So on the Libero, I have the MG outsole, which is a really great option for obviously those harder AG pitches and surfaces. Loads and loads of conical studs that just take the pressure off. Nothing too long. This is a really, really good AG option. Then you've got these little elements in the front here, these triangular shaped studs, just to give it a little bit of extra purchase and still give you a little bit of kind of dynamism, despite it being pretty safe and not particularly aggressive. Overall, on those AG pitches, this is very, very nice. Then inside the boot, you get a quite nice insole, which has a couple of pour-on inserts in it. It's far beyond what you're getting from most top-end boots these days. And remember, these are just coming in at €130. And then you'll be able to see, I hope, down here, it's probably easier for me to show you it in the Striker, there is Carvo. So Carvo is a plastic that acts and reacts a little bit like carbon fiber, and it runs pretty much from here all the way through the front of the boot. Now what this does is it means that the boot is quite responsive and springy. However, I've said this before multiple times, in this instance particularly, the outsole is very reliant on that Carvo to provide the responsiveness and the stiffness, which means that for me, the bend point is just too far back here. It's not quite as bad on the FG that I have the Striker in. You see how you've got it up here, but in that AG outsole, there's just less rigidity and stiffness through the midfoot and the heel, which means when you're just applying that pressure, it just seems to bend at a point that just feels a little bit weird, and you can start to feel it not being quite where you want it if you're trying to push off aggressively. So that's not something I'm a huge fan of, and I do think that they just need to put more structure through the midfoot and through the heel, because you can find that the heel itself, you see how there's just a little bit of, or a lack of stability in that particular area. Now this isn't an absolute disaster, and again we're going to consider the price that I got these at. I got them from Tokyo Football, by the way, so if you are looking to pick up some TLSS boots, go and check out Tokyo Football. I believe they have the Tactician in stock at the moment, which is the K leather variation or boot within the TLSS line, so go check out Tokyo Football. But back to what we're talking about, I just think that this needs a little bit of adjustment strengthening in the actual material. So this is a Pebax outsole, which is a French company, very, very high quality materials, but it just doesn't seem to be put together quite in the way that I would want, despite having a really great stud pattern. So it's good. It's a lot better than what you're going to get from an awful lot of other boots at around that €130 price point, and simply just having Carvo is a huge benefit. It's adding that, again, Japanese manufactured tech into the boot and just making it that little bit more premium. But it's not perfect, and I personally prefer the FG model. I just think it's better at what it does, and I have less issues through that heel and midfoot. It just doesn't feel quite as unstable, shall we say. However, that's not everything when it comes to the sole plate. We've also got T-Flash foam, which again, I'm hoping you can see through the back here. You should be able to. So it's basically a soft foam that runs and is kind of built into the stroller board, and it just gives you a little bit of extra cushioning, which particularly on an AG boot, on AG surfaces, is very, very welcome. It's a really, again, another great piece of tech that's been added to the boots to really just elevate them above what a lot of other brands are doing. There's brands who are charging an awful lot more for their boots. They're not putting nearly as much time and effort into them as TLSS are with this particular boot. Pretty pleased. Okay, so Laceless boot, we need to talk about the lockdown, which is fine for a laceless boot. Because that knit is so small and there's so little of it, it just means that there's less of the boot to stretch and expand, so you can get reasonably well locked in. And around this midfoot area, you can even see the shape of the boot is all entirely pinched in to allow you to push out on the boot and get that feeling of being locked in. So through the midfoot, I was pretty pleased with overall how that feels. That knit and that mesh actually runs down to about here. So you've got a lot of structure through this area of the boot just to hold you in place while being soft enough and giving you that big, clean striking surface. So they've done a pretty good job there with the laceless concept. The issue, or my issue, comes in the fact that the heel isn't particularly pinched. It's fine, it's not a problem, but it's basically the same as you get on the striker. But with the striker, I can tie my laces, I can get locked in and kind of feel pushed back into the heel. I don't get that with the laceless model, and I do get a little bit of movement through this back section of the boot. The heel either needs to be a little bit more pinched, or honestly, the solution is, of course, laces, which obviously isn't the idea here. But as far as a laceless boot goes, the lockdown here is actually pretty good. Do be careful if you don't get a good fit, if your particular foot doesn't suit this shape of the boot, which is obviously a big consideration with laceless boots. You might find yourself moving or sliding, and this front section of the boot can be quite hard. It's quite a stiff area, and if you end up kind of banging your toes off the end of here through maybe some sliding or movement, that's going to be very uncomfortable. So just be aware of that. All right, so sizing, which is critically important, especially with laceless boots, because you need to get the right size to be able to maximize that lockdown. So here I've gone for my normal, let's say, US 8, UK 7. This is a 26 centimeter boot, which is exactly the same as I got in the striker. However, both boots don't fit the same way. The Libero is definitely a little bit longer. It's not quite a full half size longer, and I definitely wouldn't recommend going down half a size. I think that your normal size is going to be the way to go, what you would normally buy in a Nike boot, for example. But I do have a little bit of room on the end of the boot. But down half would be a disaster, both in terms of the squeezing through the midfoot and also that general length. I just think that I would be far too uncomfortable in that toe box area, with it being a little bit stiff and a little bit structured. Although there is a reasonable amount of volume through the whole thing, so if you do have that higher volume foot, even though it is laceless, you probably are going to be absolutely fine here. In terms of the width, there is a reasonable amount of width here. They shouldn't have too many problems, but I'm never going to recommend a laceless boot to people who have a wider foot, because I just don't think losing that element of adjustability is absolutely worth it. So for me, if you have the wider foot, your best bet is probably going to be the Tactician if you want to pick up a TLSS boot. Okay, let's talk about value. Firstly, these are very, very difficult to get hold of at the moment because TLSS are not shipping internationally. I got mine from Tokyo Football, and Tokyo Football is currently charging 200 Singapore dollars for the Tactician. So that is the benchmark we are using, which is 130 euros, about 110 pounds, which means they are somewhere between 40 and 60 euros cheaper than what you're going to spend on, for example, a Mercurial Pro, a GX Pro, a Pro level F50, something along those lines. And in terms of the tech that you get and the quality of the boot, it's definitely in and around that ballpark for me. I think paying 160, 170 euros for these wouldn't be out of the question at all. Would I pay 220 euros plus for them and put them in that same ballpark as, say, Puma, New Balance, things like that? Probably not. I don't think they've quite reached that particular level. They've got a lot of great tech and a lot of real headline stealers that make them, I think, something that can dominate that kind of mid-price point bracket. But there's certain elements, like for example, that upper just being that little bit thicker or that little bit stiffer on the striker. Just the general bonding of the outsole to the upper. You can see there's maybe extra little lines of glue where it's maybe not been done in the best way. A couple of loose stitches coming in and things like that outsole not quite being stiff enough. None of this is reason to slam the boot. None of this is a reason to say don't buy it. But I think what it does is it means that when these go worldwide, the price that we probably want to be looking at is that first tier takedown model for Nike and Adidas as a maximum. However, if these come in at anywhere around 100 euros, which is kind of what we can pick them up for at the moment, if you can go into the right place, they're going to be an absolute steal and are something that could really go ahead and make a massive wave in the market, because for 100 to 130 euros, there's very little that can do what the TLSS do. If you want to check out my review of the Striker, which might be considered to be less premium in some ways than the Libero, but I actually prefer it, then you want to click on this video right here.